Well, it's finally happening. PlayStation will stop releasing games on discs in 2028. And if this actually happens as described, I think it would be one of the biggest shifts in console gaming since digital downloads became mainstream. But here is what I think. The first thing to separate is what Sony is saying versus what Sony is doing. Sony's argument is understandable from a business perspective. As we all know, digital sales are already the majority of PlayStation's game purchases. Another thing is that manufacturing Blu-rays, printing cases, shipping them worldwide, and dealing with retail, well, that costs money. So selling them directly through the PlayStation Store means Sony keeps a larger share of every sale. And let's not forget, publishers also get access to better analytics and more control over pricing and distribution. So from a purely financial standpoint, this is almost inevitable. But what's good for Sony isn't necessarily good for players. Because the biggest issue isn't discs, it's the ownership. And recent news regarding Sony perfectly illustrates why many gamers are worried. If you don't know, Sony removed hundreds of purchased movies from the users' libraries because the licensing agreement ended. And basically people had paid for these titles, yet they lost access anyway. And even though movies and games are different because games usually don't rely on third-party licensing in the same way, it demonstrates a broader problem. When everything is digital, you're often buying a license, not a permanent ownership. And that's something many people don't fully appreciate until content disappears or a service changes. Now, one thing people overlook is how much physical copies keep prices in check. For example, let's do a quick exercise. Imagine a new $80 game. When you have a physical disc, you can do several things with it. For starters, you can buy it from whichever retail is cheapest. You can wait for store discounts. You can buy it used. Maybe you can borrow it from a friend. Maybe you can rent it, where available obviously, and at the end sell it after finishing it. So once physical media disappears, Sony essentially becomes the gatekeeper. I mean, sure, retailers could still sell digital codes, but those codes generally don't function like physical copies. They cannot be resold or shared after redemption. And basically the second-hand market effectively disappears, which then gives platform holders much greater pricing power. And we've already seen this on PC. Steam sales are fantastic, but outside sale periods, digital storefronts often maintain high prices for years because there's no used market competing against them. And let's not forget, they will never lower the prices of games now, make no mistake of that. Because if a game now is 80, there's no way in hell it's going to be 70 or 60 even, just because you are not using the physical copies anymore and you're selling everything digitally. They are definitely going to use this as a way to make more money. That's 100% certain. And why? Well, because I would do the same. It's simple as that. Anyway, let's go back to the topic at hand. One thing I would like to talk about as well when it comes to this particular story is preservation. This is probably the biggest concern of them all. You see, physical games aren't perfect anymore because many ship unfinished and rely on day one patches. However, the disc still provides a playable version of the game, something collectors can archive, a backup if servers disappear, and historical preservation. Although when I think about it, every single game now that you boot into your PlayStation, well, you basically need to download the rest of the game, so, I mean, if we are talking about purely digital future, it means preservation depends almost entirely on publishers deciding to keep servers and downloads available. And as you might have noticed, gaming history has shown they're not always willing to do that. Also, another thing, and I kinda mentioned it before, retail will suffer greatly because of this. Take a look at GameStop, for example, independent stores and local game shops. I mean, they are already struggling. And when you remove discs, that just doesn't affect collectors. It affects retail jobs, independent game stores, trading programs, impulse purchases, for example, and gaming sections in major retailers. So that's one whole ecosystem that's gonna shrink dramatically. Albeit it has been shrinking non-stop, so this is not a huge surprise, to be honest. Now I gotta be fair a bit as well. There are upsides to this, because digital does have genuine benefits. You have instant downloads, no damaged discs, no need to swap games, faster updates, preloading after launch, and probably easier access in regions with fewer physical retailers. So you could say many people will genuinely prefer this convenience, and for someone who never sells games and buys everything during digital sales, the transition may not feel like a loss. Quite frankly, you wouldn't even notice it. However, in the end, the trend isn't, like I said, surprising. But what concerns me is the concentration of control. When you have one company that controls distribution, pricing, refunds, access, licenses, and even whether a title remains downloadable, you as a consumer basically lose leverage. And to be honest, physical media wasn't just nostalgia, it basically created competition. So if Sony, Microsoft, and eventually Nintendo all become fully digital, we, the consumers, have fewer alternatives and less bargaining power. So in the end, I think this transition was always coming, but I don't think it's an unequivocal improvement for the player. The convenience of digital is real, that's very much true, and many consumers have already embraced it. But disappearance of physical media can likely mean several things. First and foremost is less consumer ownership. Then you have fewer options for buying and sharing games. Or basically you have zero, if I'm going to be honest with you. Then the end of used game market, that's basically going to disappear. Greater dependence on platform holders, and probably more challengers for long-term game preservation. And ironically, Sony's recent removal of those purchased films has made many people more skeptical of an all-digital future. Even though the situation involved licensed video content rather than games, it pretty much reinforced a broader concern. Digital purchases can be more fragile than many people assume. So if this becomes the industry standard, I think the conversation needs to shift from discs versus digital to how companies protect customers in a digital-only world. That could basically include stronger ownership rights, clearer licensing agreements, maybe guaranteed re-download access, better refund policy, and preservation commitments. Because without those safeguards, an all-digital future risks giving us more convenience, but less control over the games we pay for. And that's basically my take on this news. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And that's it from me, until the next one.